Hey, I've been so inspired by your story as the few times that you and I have talked and about what you're doing with Play Moolah and your vision and and how your life leads you into that vision. So what I want to ask you for the beginning is if you can share with us any parts of your story from your childhood that were childhood and adolescence that were influential in shaping the values that you have and live by today.
Oh, first of all, thank you, Arie, for giving me the soapbox. Really, there's so many amazing people doing work, and I, yeah, and I just feel like service space and community. I think one thread that has been going on throughout all the check-ins is the sense of community as well. So I really, really appreciate the opportunity. So yeah, I'll start from childhood with a disclaimer that I think everyone has a time preference, and I live so much in the future that um, my recollection of the details of childhood are actually very, very scant. So I'll just probably touch on the milestones and the pivotal moments I remember. Um, One of it is I'll start with the context of rich dad, poor dad. I think most people have at least gone through what that narrative and that thread's about. There's this author who has one side of the family that's rich and one side of the family who's not, and he looks at the difference in the mindset. And so I kind of experienced the same sense, but with my grandmother. So I had a rich grandma and a poor grandma, and it was also because my grandfather had many wives, and that was during the time of the war, right? And he was born in Malaysia. And so growing up, it was very, very clear that there was one side of the family who was wealthy. They were rich, they were famous, they were investment bankers, they had businesses. And there was one side of the family who were just hardworking people. They were the administrators, they were in healthcare, they were just doing just everyday good work. And so when I was growing up, I feel that, our cultures, our families, our experiences, they form your relationship to money. And I thought I'll share my journey with the lens of money, right? With the relationship of money. And so growing up, I was always packed with the aspiration of who I should be. And money was the easiest measure of that, right? To be successful, these are the jobs you do, these are the paths that you go, these are the schools you go to. And that was my path. So my parents, they were not from a very wealthy background. They struggled a lot. My mom is the first of five sisters, and although she could go to school, she had to go out to work at 16 years old to support all the other five sisters. And my dad was born during the war, right? So very, very tough times growing up, and they basically tried to give me everything that they couldn't have. Classes, schools, and everything. And I think what that did was there was a very, very clear path of success, and that was go to the best schools, get the best jobs, and you'll be set for life, right? And we know that there's something not quite right with that narrative right now in Singapore, and in the world as well. So the first time I kind of challenged that was when I was 14 years old. So everything went kind of well. I was very, very unconscious at that time, just doing what I was told. And when I was 14, I was in one of the better girls' schools in Singapore. So there were all these highly, highly, highly achieving girls. It was a place where you have a sense of possibility and empowerment. But what happened was one day, my peer support leader, she's just 2 years older than me. You could go to her if you have any problems. And one day, she just took her own life, right? She just committed suicide. And that was a huge shock for me because she looked like she had the life, she had the grade, she had a boyfriend, she had everything, but she would just give up hope, right? And I think that was the first time I actually started questioning everything, like education, life, what's the place of you in the world, and all that. And I think what that did was it gave me a very different perspective of how I should do my education. And it was that, you know what, you could be so good at school, but it doesn't say anything about how you handle life. So can we all start taking control of our own curriculum. And what would it look like if I could design my own curriculum for life, design my own education for life? And what that led to was actually in the world of work, because I realized, you could, memorize and study for the test and do well, but that's not life. You don't learn anything about life in that way. How is it even applicable? So I also realized I didn't enjoy competing academically. I didn't see the application of that. And I was a different kind of learner. It was the first time I ever questioned how I learned, So I realized I learned through experience, I learned through conversation. And it was, how can I set up those paths to actually learn about the world? So one thing that I was always fascinated by was jobs. And I believe that you could actually learn about the world by understanding the jobs that everyone did, because everyone did something. Even to understand the world of nature or spirituality, there were people studying that. There were people, working on that. So I think by the time I graduated, I did about 10 different internships, different jobs, from banking to healthcare, etc. But going back to the lens of money, I remember this was pretty pivotal. At 14 years old, Singapore was uptight, right? The economy was booming, like everything was going well. And I was reading in the papers that the economy was doing so well. And I remember asking my parents this one question. I said, Mom, if Singapore is doing so well, if we are getting richer, who is getting poorer? Right? And I thought it was a fixed pie. Like, to me, the world was a fixed pie. And they didn't have any answer to that. They said, just ask your uncle, he's an economist, right? The other question I did ask them, I remember, was, why are the investment bankers in my family getting paid so much? And, the teachers and the nurses, why are they getting, paid what they're getting paid? Can you say that one kind of job is creating more value than the other? Why are people getting paid in this way? So there's just a lot of questions. And I think what finally shaped my values was, I think I was 18 at that time, and there was this very, very inspiring teacher in my junior college. He didn't teach me academically, but he was one teacher that saw that all the school trips in school were based on knowledge. It was the history trip, the geography field trip, but there's nothing that actually tapped into the soul, right? And he always said that, as kids, we've learned so much about the world that we have forgotten how to learn about ourselves. So what would it take to design this kind of experience? And so he started a trip called Dream, Dare, and Dive. And it was the first trip to Silicon Valley in its day. This was 2005. From Singapore to Silicon Valley, he had no idea. He knew nobody in this place. He had no idea what to do, but he just said, you know what, that's the most entrepreneurial thing I could do. I'll just plan something without any idea how to do it. He went up on stage and he said, we're going to Silicon Valley. No one in the crowd actually knew what Silicon Valley was. And he said, you know what, we're going to Disneyland. And that became the most popular trip that year. And all of us applied with essays, and he took 20 students from different disciplines, from theater, from math, from English majors, and we all went on the trip together, 14 to 18 years old. In that trip, we met about 30 people in 10 days. We went to the Delancey Street Foundation, where I don't know, I just turned from an angry teenager to actually believing in human faith and humanity, again. And it was really about the people that we met more than the place or, the companies. It was really the people. And I think it was then where every paradigm I had as a kid was shattered. I thought that the world was a fixed pie, but I saw how wealth was created. I thought that at Google, I saw how fun and autonomy could go together. I kind of saw how humanity could come together to actually regenerate in terms of the society, in terms of the soul. So I think a lot of the inspiration for the work that we do now actually stems from a lot of my own transformational experiences, whether it's using the lens of money or whether it's, actually experiencing the soul part of the experience.
Very rich story. Yeah, thank you. Wow, there's a lot there. I think we could spend the whole rest of the time right at this point in time. But I want to fast forward to Play Moolah. which I'm just fascinated with. As I try to understand what you do, I still don't quite have my mind around it, but I get it as a business and as a social enterprise both.
Mm.
And if you can briefly tell us a little bit, what is Play Moolah? What is your vision for what you're trying to do in the world, and a little bit about where are you now along that trajectory of
Mm.
vision?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for asking that. I think it's something we ask ourselves a lot, every day. And I feel like why it's so difficult to understand is we feel like we are a business that's serving a larger movement, right? And when you look at the different time scales of impact, at the first level, we talk about what's the impact to the young people who are in touch with Play Moolah. So we are basically a company that tries to build a positive relationship to money for an individual, for a young person, and in society as well. And we do that through designing technology, games, apps, online. We do that through designing experiences, game experiences. So a whole school could use, the entire compound to run around, do an amazing race, and actually experience making decisions with money. And we do that as well through circles like this, honesty circles. So people open up their homes, young people gather, and they talk about their relationship to money. So if I map these three layers to how we think about impact, I think that's been coming a lot to me recently. It is that on one level, you have what's happening right now, which is can we help shift and nudge behavior, thinking, behavior, and the heart. So we go by head, hand, and heart. You have the knowledge, the mental models, the practice, and then the heart, which is the transformation. What are the virtues and what are the narratives? What is the unconscious layer that's guiding your decisions? And that's the now. And I think when we think about future, we know that this money narrative is so embedded in culture and society that this is not the work of 5 or 10 years. This is the work of, like, we call it the 1,000-year-old tree, right? And what are the little seeds that we can sow today that helps people develop their own narrative to money and not inherit what has come from society or parents or past experience. So I would share the last thing, which is really around real action, because when the company started, this actually started in research. We never thought that it would be a company one day. And we saw that a lot of interventions, whether it's low-income communities or in schools or even with credit counseling, everyone looks at financial literacy as a skill-based topic, financial capability. You don't know how to save, let me teach you how to save, let's set goals, etc., etc. But what we realized was that in health and in finance, there are two things that are similar. One is that knowing is limited. It needs to be translated into action. Right? I know I need to go to the gym, I just don't go. I know I need to eat healthy, I just don't do it. So it's knowing doing gap. And the second thing is that the effects and the consequences are only seen much later. Right? And so it's a very, very hidden need.
The effects or the consequences of healthy versus unhealthy behavior.
Yep.
You mean, yeah.
And money as well. Right.
Healthy and unhealthy with money or with
exactly
health. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's how do you bring that awareness and that consciousness of something long term to small practices that you can do today. Yeah. Across the levels of money. So we have earn, spend, save, invest, and give. How do you actually develop practices around that in a way to steward money in line with your values? So it's moving from money being my master to I'm in control of money and I can steward it in a way that's aligned with my values, seeing money as a tool.
So I want to ask you one last question, and then we'll open up, and then you'll get to ask us a question. My last question is, right now in the development of Play Moolah and your work on all of these levels, what's the current challenge that you're working on today?
very, very good question. And I think it speaks to the mapping of the impact of what we do. Because, so I think the first challenge is that whatever we are providing is a hidden need, right? So we have the choice to do either preventive education or reactive education. Do we work with young people who are just starting to, earn their first dollar and we can cultivate healthy habits? The challenge in that is that there doesn't seem to be any urgency or any need from the point of the young person. And then we can go to a reactive space where, okay, now you're in debt, let's solve this problem. And that's where actually a lot of people are already, doing stuff there. And it kind of reminds me of something that happened recently. So the IPCC, the Panel for Climate Change, I heard in a podcast that it's the first year where they actually changed their language from preventive, like let's stop climate change, to actually adaptive. We are already in this state, let's just do something about it. Let's adapt our way forward. And I feel like right now the company is kind of in that transition of discernment as well. How long should we be doing stuff that is preventive, education, like development and all that, versus can we actually influence stuff within financial products itself? When you take out a loan, this is a new kind of loan that we can actually reimagine. When you take out a credit card, here's a new kind of credit card we can actually start influencing. And I think why I'm going in this direction is one insight after doing this work for 4 years. I mean, it feels like 40 years kind of diving into this. But we realized that, I just read a stat that 50% of Americans don't even have enough savings to pay down their credit card balances. Right? That's not a minority. And what I realized is it's not the individual person's fault. It's actually a systemic problem. Literacy can only go so far, but there are just a few people who understand how money is created as debt. There are few people who understand how systemic this problem is. And I think our personal challenge is how do you go against the system? Do you need to be in the system to do it, or can you do it outside of it?